Hello and welcome to Nile TV International's continuous coverage of the American-Israeli-Iranian war. Now it's been almost 48 hours since the ceasefire deal was reached and announced by US President Donald Trump. Perhaps the most important development that happened since the ceasefire was declared is the brutal Israeli aggression on Lebanon, hitting Beirut in a way that hasn't been seen since 1982 and killing and injuring hundreds of Lebanese civilians. A lot has happened since, including what seemed to be a promise by the Israeli Prime Minister or a demand by the American President to tone it down when it came to attacks on Lebanon, and also the Israeli Premier saying that he had finally adhered to the Lebanese government's call for talks, and also we have heard numerous statements from the US President, from the new Iranian Supreme Leader. A lot is happening or not happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to discuss all of the developments. Again, it's been 48 hours since the ceasefire deal was announced, and as in a few hours' time, or maybe 24 hours, the American and Iranian delegations will meet in Islamabad for talks that the world hopes would conclude in a comprehensive deal. With us now live over the phone from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Paul Davis, and Dr. Davis is a professor at the Institute of World Politics. Dr. Davis, good evening. Thank you as always for joining Nile TV International from Cairo, Egypt.
Well, thank you for having me.
Dr. Davis, I want to start with you with Lebanon. Whatever happened with the Lebanese issue, there are a lot of interpretations or explanations as to why the confusion, why did the Iranians think it was on the table. The Pakistani mediators said that it was part of the ceasefire deal. Mr. Trump and the US administration said no, it wasn't. The Israeli premier also said no, it wasn't. So whatever happened, what was the confusion all about in your analysis?
Well, obviously, as you have said, there was some disagreement or misunderstanding as to what the breadth and depth of the agreement was for the ceasefire. It was understood, and I had heard before it came into effect, that Israel was adamant and the United States had said that Lebanon was not part of the ceasefire agreement. And then Iran insisted it was, and Pakistan said no, that they were under the impression that it was. I don't know what it means, under the impression.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, I think the confusion was that in the 10-point proposal that had come out of Iran, there was supposed to be a discussion on Lebanon. That was accepted as a part of the talking points by the United States. Yeah, we'll talk about it. And then there was a misunderstanding that meant, okay, if they're going to talk about it, that meant there was a ceasefire extended to Lebanon, and it obviously did not.
Okay. Now, there is an explanation. Some here in the region believe that Mr. Trump had initially accepted this, and that he also saw that Lebanon was part of the deal, but actually Mr. Netanyahu, the Israeli war crime suspect prime minister, wanted by the ICC for genocide on Gaza, took matters into his own hands, and just put Trump, cornered actually Mr. Trump, who then had to react and ask Netanyahu to scale it down, tone it down, and pressured Netanyahu into accepting the talks with Lebanon. I mean, would you buy this theory?
No, I don't completely believe that. I mean, Netanyahu and Trump will discuss everything beforehand. So if there was a misunderstanding, I don't think that was part of it. I mean, we've seen that the Hamas in Lebanon has been an existential threat to Israel for a number of years. And the question in Trump's mind is he's trying to cause a ceasefire and come to some kind of agreement with Iran. Now, if Iran wants to take full responsibility for the Hamas terrorists, that's one thing.
You mean Hezbollah? You mean Hezbollah?
I'm sorry, Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So many terrorists over there, it gets me confused sometimes.
Dr. Dave, of course, also some others would debate this and would say that this is a resistance against occupation. I mean, you know that view also exists, especially when there is occupation. And parts of Lebanon is occupied, large swathes, the overwhelming majority of the Palestinian lands are occupied, some parts of Syria are occupied. Dr. Davis, the U.S. President said today that he was very optimistic about a peace deal with Iran, and he did say that he could return to striking Iran, though, if the unlikely scenario happens. Again, this is according to the U.S. President. If the unlikely scenario happens and peace talks do not bear fruit. Your comments on these statements?
I am not optimistic as to a good outcome with these talks. I still think that the two sides are very, very far apart. I could be optimistic about some kind of sustained ceasefire, but I don't know how long that's going to last. And a lot of it's going to depend on Iran's action. Let's be serious that 2 hours after the ceasefire was accepted, Iran launched missiles against Tel Aviv, attacked the UAE, it attacked Kuwait. So, we have to see how that's going to work out. And this is a big situation. There's agendas on the table. Trump has said from the very beginning, Iran will not be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Iran has said, in no uncertain terms, that it's up to them what they're going to do with their nuclear portfolio. So right there, we have a big wall to get through. So we'll see what happens.
Yes. It is just important to note that Iranian officials, just in a statement a couple of hours ago maybe, said, this is the Iranian statement, that they did not fire, since the ceasefire deal went into effect, they did not fire anything at the Arab Gulf countries or at Israel. This is what the Iranians say. Okay. Now, staying with Mr. Trump's statements, he also had a statement about an hour ago about the Strait of Hormuz, saying that, this is not what we agreed upon. This is not the deal we had, speaking about navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, earlier, he had said that Iran will not be allowed to impose taxes or, or custom duties on the Strait. But he had earlier also said that it's going to be up to America and Iran to control the Strait together. Remember when he said, I'm going to run the Strait of Hormuz along with the Ayatollah. So I just want a clearance from you as to which Trump should we believe.
Well, as you know, Trump does say a lot of stuff off the top of his head. There's a saying here that with Trump, you have to take him seriously, but not literally. The concern here and the point that he's trying to make is that the Strait of Hormuz must be left open as other international waterways are, and this is considered an international waterway, for free and unencumbered transit of non-combat troops, ships, tankers and such should be given that. There is a UN policy on that. Having said that, Iran has never signed that protocol.
Right.
So we have that problem right there. Right? At the end of the day, what has to be imposed, and this would be the world would have to impose this, is that the Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway that must be free for open navigation.
Well, obviously, the Strait of Hormuz is very important to the entire globe, with the exception of America. Because, again, I remember the U.S. president saying that the U.S. doesn't need Hormuz and doesn't need oil and doesn't need nothing from no one. So, so what do you think is happening with the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, there's very low traffic in the past couple of days, despite the ceasefire deal. Very, very low traffic. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's still a major concern, and the insurance companies are not insuring the ships to transit the strait, and there's still a lot of concern as to what is Iran going to do to any ship that comes through it. So this is a concern. That's holding up the entire situation. And just to clarify, no, the United States gets zero oil coming through the strait, and also, by the way, Europe gets very little oil that comes through the strait. So this concerns more India, China, Indonesia, Korea. That's where most of that oil goes.
Right. The IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, still speaking about the Strait of Hormuz, such an essential element of the conflict. It wasn't before the war, now it is. In fact, some have likened, including the former Russian president and Prime Minister Medvedev, some have likened the Strait of Hormuz to Iran's actual real nuclear weapon. This is how he put it. Mr. Medvedev said Iran has tested its nuclear weapon, and that is the Strait of Hormuz. The IRGC said that it is giving ships alternative routes because of the mines in the bed of Hormuz. So should we also believe the Iranians? Should we take them to their words, or are they bluffing? I mean, are there or are there not mines, or does anybody know? In the bed of Hormuz?
Well, this would not be the first time that Iran has mined the strait. They have done it in the past. And one of the reasons that the United States had hit the military installations on Karg Island was that is where the mine lane and mines were stored. Now, how many of those got through? Did Iran mine the strait prior to the conflict or in the beginning? This is something I'm sure most of the intelligence agencies know. The satellites were probably keeping a very close eye on what was going on. I mean, I seriously hope that there are no mines in the straits, because even if Iran says, okay, we're going to demine the straits, it's a very difficult and a very dangerous thing to do.
By the way, what do you think of the performance of the stock market and the oil market? Oil was at 110 plus before the announcement. Then it started to gradually decrease until it got below 100, the important psychological barrier. It reached as low as 90. I'm speaking about Brent. And then now it's 96, 97. How do you see the markets acting or reacting? Or how do you see their bets? I mean, what is the market betting on? Is it betting on the success of the negotiations, the failure of negotiations? Again, the 50-50 thing we had talked about together last week when you told me it's 50-50?
Yeah. Well, the market is a very difficult thing to control or look at.
Yes.
My personal opinion at this point, the problem with oil is that it's a world commodity, and it's priced as a world commodity.
Right. And
as we've said, there are other areas where we can get oil. We can get oil from the United States. There's plenty of oil in the United States. England, Scotland has tremendous oil fields. There are oil fields in the Gulf of Mexico. There's Alaska. There's Canada, Russia. They all have oil fields. We are betting on oil prices because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. So this is in my personal opinion, one of the problems we have with the market is that a lot of the brokers, a lot of the oil people are using the threat of closing the Strait of Hormuz to take profit.
Yes.
That's what we're seeing now.
In fact, we read a report, Dr. Davis, I'm sure you're aware of it, a report coming from America that the White House issued an order on the 23rd of March to government employees not to bet on future contracts related to the Iran war. What was that about? I mean, is there any suspicion that some top employees did that or something?
Well, there's been a tremendous problem in Congress with a concern that people in the government are using inside knowledge of what's going on to buy bonds, stocks, bonds, and trade in these areas. And I think the reason for this is as much the way they don't want it to be perceived that people in the United States government are using insider knowledge to bet on the futures of oil. Because that, in and of itself, will affect how other people buy.
I know, sir, that you are a political, strategic, and also a military expert, and not necessarily an economic one. That's what I understand. But I wanted to ask, or at least a stock market expert, but at least I wanted to ask you this, if you'll allow me. We have two views regarding the price of oil in the upcoming weeks and months for the rest of the year, let's say. One that says that oil prices will fall immediately and go back to norms. That's the Trump position. And one, say, the International Energy Agency, which says it believes that prices will stay high for a long, sustained period of time. What do you think, sir?
It's somewhere in the middle. And by the way, I do have a master's in business administration and economics.
Okay, good. So a military, political, and economic strategic expert as well. Yes, yes, Dr.
That's what happens when you get as old as I am. You have a lot of things. Yes. What I would look at is that the prices is not going to come down quickly. Not that it shouldn't, but it won't.
Okay.
But it's not going to stay as high as a lot of people are predicting. It's going to come down. It may take a month or so. I mean, we saw that as soon as the war broke out and the straits were closed, we saw massive prices in oil go up. And it still takes months for this oil to get to market. So there's plenty of oil in the tanks. There's plenty of oil in the pipeline. So those prices should not come in. That's just the way economy works.
So we want to get a prediction.
It quickly reacts to raise prices and is very slow to reduce.
So we want to get a prediction from you, the experts here. Say in a couple of months' time, when at least the ceasefire will still be holding, or maybe we would have reached a comprehensive deal. Let's assume this scenario. So in 2-3 months' time, where do you think the price range could be?
I'm going to look at it probably dropping back into the $60, $70 a barrel.
Really? All right. So that's the Trump view. I mean, he says it's going to drop in a way that very fast and very strong. Okay.
Well, it's going to drop back to where it was.
Okay.
Before.
Okay. Yeah, it was less than $70 before the war broke out. So let's go back now to the important developments here. But of course, also oil is very important, and we saw what the Strait of Hormuz did to the to the world's economies. Now, Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader of Iran, had a very interesting statement today. In a written message attributed to Mujtaba Khamenei, he told the Iranians they must stay in the streets despite the announcement of the ceasefire deal. Remember when there was talk that women and children would surround the energy stations and and just to protect it. I mean, these are people that want to protect their resources. So he told them to stay in the streets, seemingly still very skeptical of the potential outcome of the talks. And you put yourself into their own shoes. They tell you we've been burned twice by the Americans, and we've been hit twice during negotiations. And also, since Lebanon was not included in the deal, and there was a misunderstanding about that, then it's not hard to imagine that they would say that the Americans would also say there was a misunderstanding about uranium enrichment, there was a misunderstanding about the ballistic program, and so on. You know what I'm saying, Dr. Davis. So how do you see their skepticism? Are they right to be skeptical from the view of not an American, but an expert?
There should always be skepticism in any negotiation. This is part of diplomacy. But my problem is, and I always am very concerned about this, is when the Supreme Leader is ordering his people onto the streets or surround the bases, go across the bridges, putting unarmed civilians in harm's way, deliberately in harm's way. We talk about war crimes. That's a war crime. Speaking of war crimes, I wanted to ask you really, because there was a sense, according to many observers, that Mr. Trump, just like the Iranians, wanted the deal. He really wanted it. And this is why he probably accepted, any 10 points forwarded by Iran just to stop this threat of killing the civilization and throwing them back into the Stone Age. So because Mr. Trump wanted to end the war, just like the Iranians, do you think that if the ceasefire doesn't hold, or if negotiations achieve little or no progress at all, do you think he would be ready really to go back and follow through with the threats to throw Iran back in the Stone Age and risk American lives, risk economy, okay, well, to
risk
begin with, we
losing
have
the
to
Congress, the Congress elections.
Go through the rhetoric.
Yeah.
As far as bombing them back to the Stone Age, that's an old American euphemism that was used in the 60s.
Okay.
And as far as he's saying getting rid of the civilization, the actual interpretation, as I just said before, take Trump seriously, but not literally.
Okay.
When he talks about the Iranian civilization, he's talking about the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, the revolution.
Of the Islamic Republic, not Iran.
The Khomeini revolution, yes, understood.
Yeah.
So, is he going to risk, in your view, the security of his Arab Gulf allies, the American economy and the inflation and the gasoline prices, the potential of losing the two houses of Congress, the potential of having the 25th Amendment, I think it is the 25th Amendment, being
the 25th Amendment, you can just don't even think about that. That is a Democratic bugaboo.
Okay.
They cannot instigate it. Only the cabinet can instigate the 25th Amendment, and they're not going to get there.
Okay.
As far as would Trump, Trump will look at this. He'll talk to the generals, and the generals will say, "We can do this on this timeline." And yes, we're going to have a certain amount of casualties, but it's not going to be that. We are going to do a lot more damage to Iran than they can ever do to us. And at the end of the day, that we will succeed. Gas prices will come down. There'll be peace and stability in the Middle East, and that's what he's looking for. Will he risk American lives? Reluctantly, but he will.
Okay. If need be, yes. So is impeachment a possibility if Democrats control both houses?
No, because they need 60% in the Senate, and they will never get 60% in the Senate.
Okay. Now, Dr. Davis, uranium, that's a key issue, very key issue, it's very essential. Uranium and Hormuz. I mean, so what do you think is going to happen with the uranium file? The
United States is going to be very intransigent about this. They want that uranium out of there. If they have to go in and dig it out themselves. Iran cannot maintain that level of enriched uranium that can get to the point of being able to build a bomb. That's a non-negotiable point from the United States.
Okay. And maybe one final question. I don't know if it would lead to a follow-through, but this is back to the very first question. Listening to the Israeli Prime Minister, sometimes he says stuff and then we hear the same exact words from Mr. Trump the following day or the following week. And this, I'm going back again to the Israel first policy. And that's not just an accusation coming from some countries here in the Middle East against America, but also from within America. The Democrats have accused clearly Mr. Trump of applying the Israel first policy. And really listening to and just watching what is happening, sometimes you get, that impression. So in your view, is Mr. Trump applying America first policies or Israel first policies?
America first. I mean, again, understanding that Israel is a very strong ally of the United States. Trump and Netanyahu are going to speak. The statements that come out, both of them are going to be very close to the same thing. But in any case, Trump is not being led by Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is not being led by Trump. They all have their own agendas. So this is the way it's going to go forward.
What do you think will happen with Netanyahu in the elections at home?
I think he's in trouble. I think he has to be very careful about how he moves forward. I'm not that familiar totally with Israeli politics, but from what I've seen, he's always been on thin ice. Yeah. And it's a democracy. This is part of what happens in democracies.
What about the ICC file, the International Criminal Court file for Netanyahu? Do you think any more progress will occur in that file?
No, that's a lot of crap. This is, a matter of fact, the prosecutor that pushed that agenda has just been, I think, either arrested or dissolved for sexual crimes. And he was the one leading the Netanyahu prosecution. So we don't know what's going to happen with that.
But Netanyahu did commit genocide and starvation
no, he didn't.
In Gaza.
No, he did not. Dr. Davis, even if you look at the UN reports that came out, there was less civilian casualties as a ratio to military than there has been in most wars in the last century.
Dr. Davis, of the 2 million Gaza population, 70,000 died, and 170,000 were injured, and most of them were civilians, and most of them were women and children. And he hit hospitals and medics and journalists
and UN came back out after the ceasefire and said a lot of those numbers were wrong. Yes, 70,000 were killed.
What do you think will happen with the Congress elections? Is it strictly related to the outcome of the ceasefire and the war and the comprehensive deal and so on, or does it have the Congress elections? Yeah.
They've never hinged on anything from foreign relations.
Okay.
They'll hinge on the economy,
and jobs,
the
gasoline prices, and the inflation.
Traditionally, midterm elections have turned against the party in the White House.
Okay. So you think the Democrats will get both houses? We want a prediction from you. Huh?
But again, I think if the House changes, it's going to be close to what it is now. Whereas right now the Republicans have a very razor-thin majority. If it turns to the Democrats will have a razor-thin majority.
Okay.
And the same thing will happen in the Senate. The Democrats may take the Senate, but they won't have enough of a majority to do it. You said the impeachment. Impeachment requires 60% of the Senate.
So in your view, that's the final question. Is there a chance that Mr. Trump would be a lame duck president? Does that chance?
He is a lame duck president.
Sorry?
He is a lame duck president.
Is he? Now?
Yes.
How is that?
He cannot run again.
Okay.
He's only allowed to have, a president is only allowed to serve 2 terms.
Yes, understood. I'm speaking about, will he be able to have a free hand in the final 2 years of his 2.5 years?
It would be difficult, but again, the president in the United States has a lot of independent power.
Okay.
And as long as the Supreme Court remains where it is, a lot of the stuff the Democrats will try to do will be overturned,
even if they gain both houses of Congress.
even if they gain both houses of Congress.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Paul Davis. As always, the professor at the World Institute of Politics. Always a great pleasure to have you with us, sir. Thank you.